Well, hello and welcome to the Terri Cole Show. I am Terri Cole. I am so excited to be spending time with you today. This is a super special episode because I've been wanting to make it for a really long time. You guys have been asking me for years. Basically, how can you find the right therapist for you? It can be overwhelming. Many of you have wanted to get into therapy, but there's so much. So, in honor of Mental Health Month, which is what May is, I have created this step-by-step guide to assist you in finding the right therapist for you, because there is so much out there. And I also want to say thank you for all of your comments, for writing in. It makes me so happy. If you're watching on YouTube, you know that I read everything, I respond to everything, so keep them coming, because that's also how I know what it is that you would like me to talk about in the Terri Cole Show episodes. So keep doing that. If you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel and you're watching it, look at that little bell, click it so you don't miss a thing. And those of you listening to this on the podcast, if you have not given us a review on iTunes, I ask that you do, because that is how we reach more people. Thank you for being here. I super appreciate you guys. So let's talk about how to find the right therapist, shall we? Before we get into it, I want you to think about, if you're someone who's looking to do this, what is it that you need help with? What is causing you suffering or frustration? It could be addiction. It could be communication issues. It could be depression. It could be relationship problems. It could be so many different things. Codependency issues, difficulty drawing boundaries, all of the things. But I want you to get clear before you start searching, because that's going to help you have a more succinct search, is sort of knowing. You don't have to know exactly who you need. You just have to know what is causing you pain, stress, or suffering. So maybe journal a little bit about that. Like, what are the problems that are where you feel like a professional could help? The second thing I want to say is, if you've been on the fence about this, that there's been a stigma when it comes to mental health help for such a long time, and it's just so outdated. It's so antiquated. The same way, if you had a tooth that was hurting you in your head, you wouldn't think you should be strong enough to withstand that rotten tooth. You wouldn't think that you should have the skills to pull that tooth out yourself. If you should pull yourself up by your bootstraps and yank out your own tooth, would you? Of course not. This is the same exact way. There's nothing wrong with seeking help from a professional. And in fact, it takes brains to know when you need help. I've been in therapy almost straight since I was 19 years old, and it has added so much value to my life, to the point that I switched careers in my early 30s from being a talent agent for actors and supermodels negotiating contracts to becoming a psychotherapist, because I could not believe that I could learn all of these things about myself, that I could learn something that would lessen my own suffering from another human being. It just blew my mind. So my first therapist in college, she was actually in school to become a therapist. And so I was basically her internship, and she helped me so much that she stayed being my therapist, I think, for a total of maybe 8 or 9 years. Way after I was out of college, I still went all the way back to Long Island to see her. So thank you, Sue. In the meantime, my point is, there's nothing wrong with seeking help, the same way that you would for anything else. And I just think it's time. Like, that is so 1975. Let's just get over it, people, and get to decoding and demystifying this process, which is what I'm doing right now. So you're going to identify what it is that you need, and then you're going to ask other professionals that you respect. Could be a gynecologist, could be your general practitioner. Also ask friends or family members, people that you trust, if they have a therapist that they like. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you'll want to see your sister's therapist, let's say, But that therapist will definitely, if they're a good therapist, my feeling is that the good ones or the people who are similar professionally know each other. I have certain people that I refer people to, and I'm very choosy about who those people are. So I feel like the good ones stick together. So if you have a friend or someone in your life who's had a good experience, even if you wouldn't see their therapist might have an excellent recommendation for you. If you work for a company or a corporation, they may have what's called an EAP, which is an Employees Assistance Program. What happens with the EAP, a lot of times they do it differently depending on the company, but a therapist will have a contract with them, and the employees can come see that therapist for a certain number of therapy sessions, and then that therapist will refer you out if what it is that you came for isn't figured out in 6 to 12 sessions or whatever it is. All companies have a different program, and not all companies have EAPs. I think that has to be, you have to be a big enough company or corporation to do it, but it's certainly worth checking out. Schools and universities are also great resources to find therapists. So if you live in a town where there's a university, you can call their mental health department and see if they see people, or if they have people in training, like my great experience, that you could see at a discounted rate. There's also counseling centers that are not associated with schools that you in your town you may have, or the city that you're in. So you can Google that online, and a lot of times they're more likely to work on a sliding scale, to take your insurance. And the same thing with schools and universities, it's usually much less expensive. And again, with the schools and universities, usually it's a set number of sessions that they'll do, and then they will refer you out potentially. Also, use the internet, right? You can look up online the differences. And I'm giving you a list in this step-by-step guide of the most common types of therapy and types of licenses that people can have. I'm a licensed, certified social worker. That is the degree that I have. I got my degree, my master's degree from New York University in New York City, obviously. So really, I am a social worker. I knew that I wanted to go directly into private practice immediately, which I did do. And there are all kinds, depending on the state that you live in, there are all kinds of things. The difference between a psychiatrist is that a psychiatrist can actually write a prescription for medication if you need antidepressants. Some psychiatrists will also do talk therapy, some don't. There are psychologists, and so I'm not going to do this in the actual episode itself, because the episode would be 4 hours long, but I will give you a list so that you can see what are the most common. I think what most people are looking for is talk therapy. That's actually what therapy is. And now let's move into what do you do once you're narrowing it down? How do you even narrow it down? Well, you can look online for people in your area, certainly. Obviously, don't look on Craigslist or anything like that, because that would not be a good place to find a therapist, because anyone could be there. Psychology Today has a website where you can put in your zip code, and they actually do it in different countries. I don't know if it's all over the world. I know it's in Europe. I know it's in the US, North America, where you can put in your zip code and what you're looking for. So you might be looking for a specialty. If you are suffering from an eating disorder or an addiction type of issue, you would want someone who has experience in those things, which I'm going to give you a list of questions that you can ask a therapist to try to figure out if it's a good fit. So there will be a list of places where you can look in the guide, and let's move into how to actually do it. Once you sort of narrow it down, it's really about what the person's specialty is, right? That's what you want to know, because once you do the first step in the guide, which is sort of figuring out what's happening for you, how you're feeling, what is going on, where you're in pain, that's going to guide you to, do you need someone who is an addiction expert? Are you dealing with childhood trauma, sexual abuse? That's going to be someone who is a trauma expert. And there are different things that they can do besides talk therapy. There's also EMDR, which is a particular type of treatment which has to do with rapid eye movement. So I'll put lists in there. There's also things that you can do and you can learn about on your own, like tapping, which can be very helpful. It's not the same as going to a therapist, but it can support you lessening the feelings of stress and anxiety, along with meditation and all the other things. So I'll put that basically at the bottom of the guide, other actions that you can take and things to look out for that might be exacerbating how you're feeling, like drinking too much. Maybe if you're feeling a lot of anxiety, you shouldn't be drinking 2 pots of caffeinated coffee a day. So things that may seem obvious, being hydrated enough. Being dehydrated actually will exacerbate feelings of anxiety. So there's a couple of tips and tricks that I'll also put at the end of the guide for you to think about. So let's say you go, okay, so now I kind of have an idea of what it is. Maybe you just need to talk to someone. Maybe you just need to talk things out. That's okay too. So then you know you're looking for talk therapy. So let's say you find a couple, you get a referral from your doctor, you look on Psychology Today website, which obviously all of the URLs we will also include in the show notes. And you can download this guide by just going to terricole.com/246, because this is episode number 246. Easy breezy, download it. Everything you need is going to be in there for you. So you make a couple of appointments. When I say appointments, you ask them if they will do a free consultation. A lot of therapists will do that. Why do you want to do a free consultation? Because you want to get on the phone with them, or maybe they'll be doing it on Skype or on FaceTime, and ask a couple of questions. And I think that you can really find out a lot about someone, about whether they do a free consultation or not. Sometimes they call it a free intake, which never makes sense to me, because to me, an intake means we're starting work together. So I call it a free consultation. They'll know what you mean. A lot of therapists will do a 20-minute call with you to answer the questions that you have and kind of to see if it's a good fit. And my feeling is that any good therapist, they want it to be a good fit too, right? I'm not looking for a therapist who's so desperate for work that they'll take on anyone, even if they don't have the skills to help you. And you have to know what you know and know what you don't know. And a seasoned therapist certainly knows that. I was always incredibly happy to refer people out to other therapists even if I just thought that they would be a better fit than me. I could probably help the person. But if it was real trauma, and I knew a trauma expert that's pretty much all they did, to me, that would be a better fit. So I would be happy to refer them out. So when you have the actual meeting with them, I'll give you a list of questions that you can ask them. And one is that you want to know that they have experience. How much experience do they have treating someone with what it is that you're going to them for help for, right? We want to know what their experience level is. Also, I want you to get in the right mindset. You are interviewing them, right? Maybe they're interviewing you too. But the reality is, a lot of times people have this authority thing with therapists, and they feel like, well, I don't know, and I don't know the right things. I'm going to let them lead. But I don't want you to do that, which is why I created this episode and this guide for you. It's your life. It's your mental health. And there are very good questions, which I'm going to give you in the guide, that you can ask them to see what kind of therapy do they do. If you are looking for interactive therapy, with someone who's going to talk to you, you would like them to make suggestions for things that maybe you could read. You don't mind having a little bit of homework. Maybe they'll give you journal prompts. You want to know if they do that. You're not looking for, if you're not, I'm going to assume you're not, a therapist who sits there and stares at you the whole time and barely gives you any input. And that can be a particular kind of therapy, where they're doing a lot of observing. But I find, and maybe it's because I do in my own private therapy practice, it's a very interactive type thing with a lot of coaching elements to it. And I think that that's a lot of what is very helpful, because then you can get into action with that. So you have your list of questions to ask them, and you'll be able to get a vibe about someone when you're talking to them on the phone. But remember, the same way that you wouldn't go to any doctor, or the same way that you wouldn't go to any professional that you haven't checked out. I mean, I check out everyone extensively online. I go to the Better Business Bureau. I make sure that there's nothing against them, that nobody had a bad experience. So, and there are ways that you can find that information out as well. So you're going to ask them, you're going to get a vibe, and then you're going to start therapy. And I also think that it's perfectly reasonable to go for a few sessions and see how you feel. I would build that into my therapy with clients, saying, okay, so why don't we do 4 sessions and then circle back and see if we're talking about the right things. Let's see if it's working or you're feeling better. Basically to see if we're a good fit. And then neither person has to feel weird if after a month you're like, nah, or they're like, nah. That's okay. Not everyone is going to be a great fit, but I want you to go in with the right frame of mind, that it's all about how you feel, what you want, and you being feeling comfortable with that person. And that will take some time, right? It'll take a few sessions. The way that I work is that the first X number of sessions, it's really, I'm collecting information about the person. I'm creating a roadmap of their life so that as the treatment goes on, I have a points of reference of like, oh yeah, so that reminded me of that story, that traumatic thing that happened for them in 3rd grade. So not necessarily like we're going to be talking about 3rd grade for 10 years, but if there are significant things that happened in life, and hopefully there's an extensive intake, because that's also where I would gather a lot of information about the person and their history so that it wouldn't take as long for us to really start diving into the meat of the matter. And the last thing I want to say is that online therapy is now a really valid option for people. And so I actually have an association with BetterHelp.com. You can check it out by going to terricole.com/BetterHelp. And this is where you have a therapist online. There's other ones as well, like Talkspace. I know me and my team and my extended family actually vetted BetterHelp, so I can vouch for the fact that it works for the people in my crew who've done it, and that very professional, kept their word. Everything is very quick. You get in touch with them. Every person who did it in my crew was contacted by a potential therapist that day, and they were text messaging and emailing and doing video conferencing. And you know, with some people still sheltering in place and really not wanting to go out if they don't have to, this really is a perfect time for this modality. And I, as a therapist for many years, I had clients all over the world for years doing it on FaceTime or Skype, and it has worked just as well as in person. And I found it really convenient because both of us could do it from anywhere. So that's something that you can check out. And it actually is considerably less expensive than seeing a therapist in person. So it depends on your life, whether something like that works for you. But I would say for sure, check it out. If it's something that sounds like you'd want to do it, it's terricole.com/BetterHelp. So I know that's a lot of information. I hope that it was super helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share this episode if it added value or opened your eyes. All you need to do to get your guide is go to terricole.com/246, and the guide is right there and downloadable for you. I mean, you know, Mental Health Month, this whole month we've been talking about, and I've been going live and taking questions about mental health. And I just figured I would end the month with something that you could really use if you're serious about getting help and giving yourself the gift of accelerating your growth, because that's really what one-on-one therapy does. So if you enjoyed this, please share it. Please keep your comments coming. Please go give us a good review on iTunes if you listen to this, if you're one of my podcast peeps, because you know, YouTube peeps and podcast peeps, you are different people for real. And I just want to say thank you so much for for listening, for sharing, for caring about your mental health. I so appreciate you. I hope you guys have the most amazing week. And as always, take care of you.